Hey guys, how are you today? Quick rant before we dive into today's chaos. As some of you might have noticed, YouTube's algorithm has decided I'm not special anymore. Shocking, I know. So now if you don't like, comment, or do a little backflip in the algorithm's honor, this video might just vanish into the void, never to be seen again. Seriously though, even a hi or "this is wild" in the comments helps way more than you think. It tells YouTube, hey, people actually like this channel. Maybe don't hide it from everyone. That can really help push my videos out to a wider audience, not just to my subscribers. So if you enjoy these stories and want to support the channel, that's the best way to do it. Now grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the drama. You won't want to miss this one. I, 28 male, have been with my girlfriend Jen, 26 female, for 3 years. We live together in a rented apartment, and until recently, I was planning to propose to Jen during her family reunion last month. I had the ring ready and everything. I've been working up to this for months, even asking one of her friends for advice on the ring. That family reunion was a big weekend event at her grandparents' place out of town, and I was invited to join. I figured it would be a perfect time to pop the question in front of her family. My plan was to propose during the big dinner on the final night. The reunion started off fine, but I noticed a guy around my age hanging out a lot with Jen. Let's call him Mike. He seemed pretty familiar with her and some of her relatives, but I'd never heard Jen mention him before. At one point, I found them alone on the back porch chatting. When I walked out, they went quiet. It felt odd, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Jen introduced Mike to me as an old friend from college. I shrugged it off at first since it was a family gathering, and people invited people, and people were catching up with old friends. On the second night of the reunion, there was a big bonfire and people were drinking. I was sitting with some of Jen's relatives, including one of her younger cousins, Liv, 24 female. Liv had a bit too much to drink, and out of nowhere, she asked me, "Why can't you take a hint and leave Jen for someone better?" I was completely caught off guard. I remember kind of laughing awkwardly and asking, "What hint? What are you talking about?" Liv gave me a pitying look and mumbled something like, "Everyone knows Jen and Mike have a thing. She says you're too clingy," before another cousin shushed her and pulled her away. I was left sitting there speechless and confused. That comment spun around in my head. I realized Mike might not be just an old college buddy. Jen had been oddly distant the past couple of weeks, and she'd insisted I didn't need to help much with planning for the reunion. Now I wondered if she had secretly invited Mike herself. I decided I needed answers. I pulled Jen aside away from the bonfire and straight up asked her, "Who exactly is Mike to you?" She looked irritated and told me he's just a friend. "You're being paranoid." I mentioned what her cousin, without naming Liv, had said about me needing to take a hint. Jen rolled her eyes and finally admitted, "Okay, fine. He was an old fling, but that was ages ago. We're just friends now. Stop making a scene." I wasn't raising my voice or causing a scene at all. I was just quietly trying to get a straight answer, but Jen acted like me questioning her was a huge offense. She kept insisting I was overreacting and said I was too clingy for even caring that Mike was there. That stung. I'd never been called clingy in our 3 years together, at least not to my face. If she had issues with me or our relationship, she sure hadn't shared them. And now I find out she's been telling her family I'm clingy behind my back. I'll admit I'm the type of boyfriend who likes to stay in touch and be involved. But she never once told me it was a problem. In fact, she often initiated contact just as much. So, hearing that she was describing me as smothering was a shock. I told her I felt disrespected that she invited an ex-fling to a family weekend that I thought was going to be special for us. At that moment, I still didn't tell her I was planning to propose. It didn't seem worth mentioning by then. She just scoffed and said, "You're not seriously jealous of Mike, are you? It's not like that." At that point, I was done arguing. Later that night, Jen actually went off with Mike and a couple of cousins to hit a bar in town. She didn't invite me to come along. She just said, "You can stay here if you're tired. I'll be back later." So she basically ditched me at her grandparents' house to go drinking with her ex-fling. I was sitting alone in our guest room feeling humiliated. The person I loved and was about to propose to had not only lied about who this guy was, but also chose to spend time with him over me that night. I felt like a complete fool. While she was out at the bar, I quietly packed my suitcase. I ended up leaving the reunion that same night. I left a short note in the guest room, saying I was heading home and that we'd talk later. Then I drove 4 hours straight back to our apartment. The very next day, I started moving my stuff out of our place. I grabbed the essentials and went to stay at my brother's apartment for the time being. I didn't immediately tell Jen the relationship was over. I just texted her that I needed some space and would be staying with my brother for now. Honestly, I was done with her, but I wanted to avoid a huge fight while I was still in the process of grabbing my things. Within a couple of days, once I'd moved most of my belongings, I told her directly that it was over. I kept it short. I said I heard enough to know she hadn't been honest with me, and I couldn't trust her anymore. She tried calling me a few times. I ignored most of the calls. The one time I did pick up, she was furious that I embarrassed her by leaving the reunion early. She said I made her look bad in front of her family by just disappearing. She was also mad I wouldn't hear her out and accused me of overreacting. I told her I did try to talk to her that night, but she decided to go off with someone else instead of resolving things with me. That call ended with her calling me insane for thinking anything was happening with Mike. I hung up on her at that point. We haven't talked since. I never got to propose. Obviously, only my brother and my best friend, and one of her friends know that I was going to. In a way, I'm relieved I found out how she really felt before I went through with it. It still really sucks that things ended like this after 3 years, but I'd rather know now than later. But I wonder if I handled it the right way. I basically ghosted my girlfriend of 3 years after that fight, and I bailed on the tail end of her family event with no warning. I'm sure that caused a stir when they realized I was gone. Maybe I should have stayed and confronted things more directly, but I just felt done. So, Reddit, am I an a-hole for walking out on Jen and ending our relationship the way I did? Not the a-hole. OP didn't ghost her. OP removed himself from a deeply humiliating situation with someone who had already emotionally checked out. She lied about who Mike was, talked trash about O to her family, called a clingy behind his back, and then literally ditched OP at her grandparents' house to go drinking with her ex. That's disrespect. OP tried to talk. She minimized, deflected, and flipped it on OP. Leaving quietly and then ending things once OP was safe and calm was probably the most dignified way OP could have handled it. And now let's hear community's opinion. Also, can we talk about the cousin? Live low-key did you a favor. Drunk or not, everyone knows Jen and Mike have a thing, is not something you just randomly invent. That means your girlfriend had been complaining about you and painting herself as some trapped, smothered angel to justify bringing her old fling to the same weekend where you were supposed to propose. She created a narrative where you're clingy and unreasonable, so she can keep a backup option in the wings. That's not someone you build a marriage with. That's someone you dodge a bullet from. People keep getting hung up on the word ghosting, but you didn't disappear with zero communication. You left a note, you texted that you needed space, and you eventually told her directly it was over. What she's mad about isn't the method. It's the fact that she lost control of the situation. She wanted to keep you, her family's good opinion, and her emotional situationship with Mike. You refusing to sit there and play the clueless, grateful boyfriend ruined that illusion. Of course she's calling you insane. That's classic, how dare you see through me energy. If you had stayed, the script would have been, she minimizes, you're painted as jealous, the family sees you as the problem, and she keeps Mike around as a friend while you die inside. Instead, you listened to the giant neon red flag and left before you proposed to someone who already considered you an inconvenience. That's not being an a-hole, that's self-respect. Mourn the 3 years, sure, but don't waste a second mourning the proposal that didn't happen. You didn't lose a wife. You dodged a lifetime of being the clingy guy waiting in the house while she goes to the bar with her old friend. Update 1. Thank you to everyone who responded. I read a lot of comments urging me not to second-guess myself, and that helped me accept that I did the right thing by leaving. Some of you suspected there was more going on with Jen and Mike, and you were right. A few people also asked if I thought Jen actually cheated on me with Mike that weekend. I don't have any evidence of that, and from what Liv and others saw, it doesn't seem like they did anything beyond flirting. But to be honest, it almost didn't matter at that point. Jen had already broken my trust by sneaking him into our weekend and lying to my face. That was enough for me to call it quits. A couple days after my post, I got a message from Jen's cousin, Liv, the same cousin who drunkenly blurted out that comment to me. She apologized for the way I found out and for the wording she used. Liv told me that she hadn't meant to be harsh. She was just tipsy and upset on my behalf. According to her, several family members, including Liv, knew something was off that weekend. Apparently, Jen had confided to a few of them that she felt I was smothering her, and that she invited Mike to catch up and as a way to signal to me that I should back off a bit. Yeah, pretty messed up logic. Liv said she thought it was unfair to me, and that's why she made that snide comment, even though it wasn't her place. She also confirmed that Mike wasn't just a random friend dropping by the reunion. Jen had invited him specifically and encouraged him to come. I asked Liv if she knew whether Jen and Mike had hooked up or something during or after the reunion. Liv said she honestly didn't think so, and that from what she saw, Jen was kind of testing the waters with Mike, maybe to see if there was still a spark. But apparently Mike went back home after that weekend, and there's been no sign of a new relationship there. In other words, it doesn't sound like anything came of Mike's appearance that weekend after all. So, who knows? Maybe Jen was hoping for something that didn't pan out. As for me, I managed to finish moving all my stuff out of the apartment without any more drama. It hurt to do that, but I knew I was doing the right thing by leaving. I never saw Jen in person during that process. We coordinated through a couple of texts, and I picked up the rest of my things when I knew she'd be at work. We also settled a few practical things like taking my name off the lease. She decided to keep the apartment on her own. Her parents reached out to me once, actually. Her mom called to check if I was okay and to apologize in a roundabout way. I think she was embarrassed about the whole situation. She said Jen was very upset that I left and that it was all a misunderstanding. I didn't go into detail with her mom. I just said that I appreciated her call, but that this was between Jen and me. That was a polite way to end the conversation. I suspect Jen hadn't given her family the full truth of what happened, or maybe she spun it like I overreacted. Either way, I didn't feel like getting into it with her mom. By now, Jen and I are officially no longer together, and there's been minimal contact. In the first couple of weeks after leaving, I was pretty down and angry. I crashed at my brother's place, and he, along with my best friend, kept me sane through a lot of late-night venting sessions. My best friend was especially furious on my behalf when I told him the whole story. Having those two around really helped me get through the worst of it. I've been focusing on work and spending time with friends and family. The shock and anger have worn off a bit, and I'm mostly feeling relieved to be out of that situation. It sucks to invest 3 years into a relationship and have it end because of something like this, but I'd rather know now than later. One unexpected positive that came out of this. I've actually struck up a bit of a friendship with Liv. After that initial apology chat, we kept talking occasionally. She checked in on me a few times, and we found we get along pretty well. We never really talked one-on-one before all this. Honestly, it's been nice to have someone who actually witnessed some of the reunion debacle to talk to. She's been supportive and has given me a lot of clarity about what was happening behind the scenes. So that's where things stand a few weeks after the breakup. I'm single, focusing on myself, and not rushing into anything. I've put the engagement ring idea to rest. Returned the ring, actually. I'm just glad I learned the truth before making an even bigger commitment to the wrong person. Thank you again for the judgment and advice. It helped me keep my head on straight. Update 2. It's been about 5 months since my last update. I was just going about my life, working and hanging out with friends. I kept in touch with Liv on and off. At first, it was mostly texting, sharing memes, or the occasional quick phone call. We didn't talk about Jen much, aside from a few times where I asked some lingering questions, and Liv gave me frank answers. Mostly we talked about random other stuff, TV shows, work, life. It was refreshing, actually. Eventually, Liv and I decided to meet up in person. It started pretty casual. We grabbed lunch once when she was in my part of town for work. I'll admit, I was a little nervous about meeting one-on-one just because of the weird circumstances. She's my ex's cousin after all. But as soon as we sat down and started talking, it felt natural. We had a lot in common, and the conversation just flowed. Lunch turned into an afternoon of us strolling around and talking about everything from our favorite music to childhood stories. It was nice, really nice. After that day, we started hanging out more frequently. Sometimes we'd grab coffee, or she'd join me and some of my friends for a casual get-together. Other times, we just went on walks or hung out at the park. It didn't feel like dating at first. It felt like I'd made a new close friend at a time I really needed one. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't start noticing how amazing she is. Liv is funny, down to earth, and incredibly kind. She also happens to be drop-dead gorgeous, which I somehow didn't fully register at the reunion when my mind was on Jen. Over the weeks, it became clear there was some chemistry between us beyond just friendship. I was hesitant, and so was she for obvious reasons. One evening, we had a frank conversation about it. I told her I really valued her presence in my life after all the chaos, and I admitted I was starting to feel a bit more than just friendly towards her. Liv confessed she felt the same way, but she was worried about how it might look. She said, "This is also crazy. I mean, you were with Jen and now me." She wasn't wrong. It's a unique situation. I also brought up the concern of how others might see us, especially her family. Liv acknowledged it would be gossip fodder for sure, but in the end, we agreed that our happiness was more important than other people's judgments. We both agreed we should be careful and not rush into anything. Neither of us wanted it to be some rebound fling or to hurt anyone unnecessarily. For a little while after that talk, we kept things platonic, at least on the surface, but it was like acknowledging the possibility made it even harder to ignore. We kept gravitating toward each other. Finally, about 4 months after my breakup with Jen, so roughly 2 months of this close friendship, we decided to give an actual relationship a try. We treated ourselves to a proper first date soon after. That evening went wonderfully, and just confirmed for us that we were doing the right thing. It was just one night when I was dropping her off at her place. I gave her a hug goodnight, and instead of letting go, she kissed me. I'm now dating my ex-girlfriend's cousin. Trust me, I had a lot of internal debates about it. But life is weird. I never expected any of this, but I also didn't expect to find someone who clicks with me on so many levels. We're taking things slow and keeping it mostly to ourselves for now. The only people who know are a few of my close friends. They were shocked at first. One of my buddies joked that my love life belongs on reality TV, but ultimately they've been supportive. One friend even said he's never seen me as happy as I am with Liv. Another friend told me she was just glad I wasn't letting my past heartbreak stop me from moving on. Essentially, their take is, hey, it's wild, but if you're happy, we're here for it. I know some folks might raise an eyebrow at the situation, but to be honest, I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong. Jen and I are done, and we were done because of her actions. Liv had nothing to do with our breakup except accidentally spilling a truth that I deserve to know. Liv and Jen aren't even that close as cousins. Turns out they only see each other at big family events once or twice a year. Still, out of respect, we're trying to be low-key for now. It feels weird to say this given everything, but I'm genuinely happy. Happier than I was in my last months with Jen, that's for sure. Update 3. Hello again. I didn't think I'd be back with more drama, but here we are. A few weeks after Liv and I officially started dating, we decided it was time to stop hiding it from everyone. We were getting serious enough that sneaking around felt silly and stressful. Plus, I really care about her, and it didn't feel right for me to act like I was ashamed of our relationship. Liv agreed, but we were both nervous about how her family, especially Jen, would take the news. We started by telling the people closest to us. I had already told my own brother and a couple of friends who were all supportive. Liv ended up confiding in her older sister first, who thankfully took it pretty well. Her sister apparently said something like, "Well, that's unexpected, but if you're happy, I'm happy for you." That gave us a bit of confidence. Next, Liv told her mom. Her mom was a little more hesitant. Not upset exactly, but concerned about family awkwardness. She did warn Liv, Jen might not react well. Liv's response was basically, "Yeah, I know, but I hope she can understand that this just happened naturally." News like this travels fast in families, and we didn't even get a chance to tell Jen. She found out through the grapevine within a couple of days. I'm not sure who told her, possibly an aunt or maybe her mom. Either way, she did not take it well. The first sign of trouble was when Liv started getting angry texts from Jen. They ranged from accusing her of betraying family trust to calling her a bunch of unpleasant names I won't repeat here. Jen told her that dating my sloppy seconds, yep, she went there, was disgusting, and that no decent person would do what we're doing. It was nasty. At this point, it had been roughly 5.5 months since the breakup between Jen and me. I hadn't spoken a word to Jen in all that time, but now, suddenly, she was blowing up my phone too. First, with a couple of lukewarm, "I heard about you and leave" messages like she was fishing for my take, and then with more aggressive ones when I didn't immediately reply. I eventually agreed to a short phone call with Jen, figuring it might be better to address things directly one time and set boundaries. In hindsight, I'm not sure if it accomplished much, but at the moment, it felt like the mature thing to do. I told her I was sorry if the situation hurt her, but I also made it clear that nothing happened with Liv until well after our breakup, and that I never cheated on her. Jen was fuming on the call. She didn't shout, but she said what I was doing was messed up and cruel, and that I must have been eyeing her cousin the whole time. I calmly refuted that. Not that she listened. She also snapped, "How do you think this makes me look? You run off with my younger cousin right after me. Everyone's going to think I was the problem." I didn't say it aloud, but I thought to myself, well, you kind of were the problem. The call didn't really resolve much. I told Jen I understood she was upset, but that we're all adults and we'd have to deal with the situation as it is. I also said that if she has issues processing it, she should talk to someone, maybe a therapist, but not take it out on us. She gave a sort of half scoff and said she wanted nothing to do with either of us before hanging up on me. I hoped maybe she'd cool off after getting to say her piece. Despite that tension, things between Liv and me have been great. Honestly, being with her feels worlds apart from my past relationship. We communicate openly, enjoy each other's company in simple ways, and there's just this ease between us. As a fun example, we went out with a group of my friends a couple of weekends ago, and some guys at the bar kept flirting with Liv until they realized she was with me. It didn't faze her at all. In fact, she found it funny. At one point, to really drive the point home that she was off the market, she just pulled me in and planted a big kiss on me right in front of those guys. It was a pretty great moment, not going to lie. I've never been with someone who shows that level of confidence in being with me. I jokingly told her later that night, here I was searching for copper and I ended up finding gold. It made her laugh, but I absolutely meant it. So yeah, aside from the family drama, my life has taken a turn for the better. Most of Liv's relatives are actually being decent about us dating after the initial surprise. From what Liv tells me, a few have told her that as long as we're happy and treated well, that's what matters. Of course, there are a couple of more gossip-prone ones who have opinions, but they're keeping it to whispers. The only person who's outright hostile is Jen, which we expected. We've been doing our best to just live our lives and not rub anything in her face. We haven't gone to any family gatherings together or anything like that. We figured it's best to give it time and space. For the moment, Jen actually seems to be keeping her distance. No more messages or confrontations since that phone call. Maybe she realized nothing good would come from stirring the pot further. I'm hoping that means the worst is over and that we can all just move on peacefully. Update 4. It's now been about 8 months since the breakup, and honestly, I wish I could say everything settled down nicely, but that would be a lie. Jen's reaction went from anger to something I can only describe as desperation. Despite her telling me she wanted nothing to do with us, she apparently changed her mind. She started reaching out again, and not in a friendly way. Over the past few weeks, Jen has been calling and texting me out of the blue. At first, I ignored her messages, which were mostly just her saying we needed to talk. Then the tone shifted to her begging me to remember what we had, and telling me she made a mistake. She sent a couple of messages basically apologizing for the misunderstanding at the reunion, and saying she misses me. She even explicitly said, "I was wrong, I do love you, and I realize it now." It's a 180 from her attitude before, and I'm not buying it at all. Honestly, seeing her suddenly profess her love after everything just made me shake my head. It felt like too little, too late. I haven't responded to any of these beyond one text early on, where I firmly told her that she needs to stop and that this is not appropriate. The more disturbing part is that Jen has also been trying to involve herself in Liv's life. It started with random social media follows and messages from fake accounts after getting blocked on her real one. At first, it was just weird anonymous DMs saying things like, "Please talk to me." Liv quickly caught on. The messages sounded like Jen and mentioned personal stuff, and she blocked those too. Then one day, Jen showed up at Liv's workplace under the pretense of wanting to have lunch and talk things out. Liv left her standing in the lobby and told security that she didn't want personal visitors at work. Liv was pretty shaken up and called me right after. I stepped out of a meeting at my job to calm her down over the phone, because it really rattled her to have Jen ambush her like that. Jen has since been spotted a couple of times now near our neighborhood. For example, I spotted her car idling slowly down our street one evening when I was taking out the trash. She drove off as soon as she saw me notice her. Another time, we both saw the same car parked on the corner and realized it was hers before it peeled away. It's unsettling to say the least. We've documented everything in case we need to get a restraining order. We haven't gone to the police yet, and we really don't want it to come to that. Liv did reach out to her parents, who are Jen's aunt and uncle, to let them know what's going on. From what I hear, they had a serious talk with Jen about leaving us alone. Supposedly, Jen broke down crying to them, saying she lost the best thing she ever had, and that seeing me with someone else, let alone her cousin, has been eating at her. But as much as I can sympathize with someone regretting a mistake, it's not an excuse to harass us. Liv, for her part, is both angry and saddened by her cousin's behavior. They were never particularly close, but she still never expected Jen to go off the rails like this. At this point, any remaining cousinly relationship between them is pretty much torched. On my end, I'm mostly just frustrated that Liv has to endure this drama because of me. It makes me angry to see her put through this, but she's handling it better than I think I would if the roles were reversed. At this point, I have no interest in engaging with Jen at all. I'm committed to Liv, and we're thinking of maybe taking a weekend trip together soon to get a break from all this drama. We might head up to the mountains or somewhere, with no cell reception, just to unplug from all this nonsense for a couple of days. For now, we've both blocked Jen on everything, and told friends and family not to give out any info about us if she asks. If she continues to cross lines, we'll go the legal route. It's a crappy situation, but we're not about to let her ruin what we have. I'm calling this the final update because I really hope there's nothing more to add after this. The last thing I wanted was this shitty situation, but life got wild on me. All I can say is that I'm grateful I found out the truth before making a huge commitment to the wrong person. Liv and I are excited about the future, whatever it might bring. Liv and I are still doing great as a couple, despite the outside noise. Thanks to everyone who followed along and offered support. I appreciate it. Here's hoping my next post on Reddit is something mundane like how to make pineapple pizza.